For almost 15 months, something terrible was happening in the streets of St. Louis. Someone was taking women and forcing them into a murderous gang. She doesn't know it yet, but this woman is now part of a madman's home movie.
Let me tell you, Tom, see right there.
A psychopath who takes women prisoner, then drags them down into his basement torture chamber.
Just get your ass down like I said.
Almost all of it is too horrifying to watch. It's bad enough just to listen to the sounds of terror.
Take the tape off again and see what happens.
It's a scene straight out of Silence of the Lambs.
Because you ain't going home long. I'm going to keep you about a week.
And when he finally tires of tormenting them, he kills his prey for sport.
This is first kill, number one. First kill was 19 years old.
The first kill, but he had plans for many more. A serial killer in the making, who was certain he could outsmart police. Illinois State Trooper Jimmy Walker found the first body.
It was a deceased black female, partially clad, laying on her back.
By May of 2001, there were 4 more victims across 2 states, a new one every 6 to 8 weeks. Police came to believe these were the terrible acts of a single madman.
We were sure that we had a serial killer.
And when you'd get a call, hey, there's another body around here, Jimmy, what would you think?
You'd realize that, yeah, more likely it was the same person.
He'd done it again.
Yes, sir.
And the killer kept killing. By the end of August, 8 women were dead, and each fit the same vicious pattern. All prostitutes, all had their legs and arms bound, all tortured, then strangled or suffocated, and all finally dumped near the side of a road.
When you put a puzzle together, it's the pieces that you don't know that keep you from being able to solve it.
St. Louis Police Chief Joe Moqua was caught up in this deadly game of cat and mouse, and there were no solid leads. So homicide investigators from Illinois, Missouri, and the FBI formed a joint task force to try to catch the killer before he struck again.
What did you make of the fact that the killer was leaving the bodies where they could be found so easily?
He was confident, he was arrogant, that he wanted people to know that these women were being killed, and that I think he was leaving little clues.
Do you feel that he was taunting the police?
I think he was making a statement that he's pretty bright and he's not been caught.
As police started to put the murders together, they discovered that several women had ties to this strip of Broadway, just north of St. Louis. It's an area where crack houses are easy to find, and women turn to prostitution to pay for their drugs.
And these gals give prostitution a bad name, really. When you see on HBO, they got the short skirts and the fishnet stockings and their hair all done up, they didn't like that around here.
Bill Morrow owns a bicycle shop right on Broadway, which gives him a front row seat to this sordid world.
They'll have the same clothes on for 3 days, their hair will be dirty. It's just about getting a hold of cocaine.
That's apparently what drove Brenda Beasley, a 33-year-old mother of 3, who walked these streets at night, waiting for men to pull up in their cars.
Easy prey for a killer?
Really easy prey, yes.
In October of 2001, Brenda Beasley's body showed up here in East St. Louis. She was victim number 9. By now, more than 10 investigators were charting connections among the murders, and they had several theories. The most common profile for a serial killer is a young white male loner. Because many victims were left near major highways, some thought the killer might be a truck driver whom people didn't notice. But they also pursued something new, an urban predator who works in inner city like a killing field.
The police gave the name Streetwalker Strangler to this person.
The Streetwalker Strangler. Bill Bryan has been the top police reporter in St. Louis for 25 years. You can often find him behind the locked doors of the homicide squad. It was Bryan who broke the story that a serial killer was on the loose.
What kind of person did police believe they were looking for?
They had no clue. They had no idea. They just thought it was a person who liked to pick up prostitutes, but that's all they knew. He was getting away with it.
They're going to have to compare them again.
In late 2001, the task force went almost 4 months without finding any new bodies. Authorities wondered what happened to the killer. Then, early last year, 3 more victims showed up. Only skeletons. Police still had nothing to go on and reached out to the crime lab for help.
That's a start, at least finding out who your victim is.
Sergeant Joe Seiferman of the Illinois State Police uses artwork to turn bones and skulls back into human faces. A forensic anthropologist examines the skeleton, telling Seiferman that this skull comes from an African-American woman, 25 to 40 years old, about 5 feet tall. Seiferman then charts 32 different landmarks on the skull with erasers, each representing the standard facial tissue for a woman that size.
So now you've got these erasers pasted to the skull. Now what?
Then I will create an overlay drawing on top of the skull. It's kind of like doing a tracing, getting the shape, overall shape of the face.
It's a remarkable blend of art and forensic science, using those measurements to sketch the eyes, nose, and mouth until he transforms each skull back into a face.
What do you know and what don't you know when you make this?
The exact shape of the eyes and the nose, it's hard to exactly recreate it. It's my interpretation.
I mean, frankly, it's guesswork.
Yes, we call it an artistic interpretation.
And you're just hoping that somebody's going to see this and say,
I think I know that person.
And if they know that person, perhaps they saw the man who took her. But these painstaking efforts lead to a dead end. No one comes forward to ID any of the women. To Bill Smith, a feature reporter at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the murders felt like not one, but 2 tragedies. A serial killer was at large, striking whenever he pleased, while his victims were being ignored.
It really, I guess, would tug at anybody's heart to know that. I mean, to know that these people were dying and nobody cared.
Smith saw a story in these women. He never imagined it would lead back to this basement and straight to the killer.
You sit your down like I said.
Through the early months of last year, the streetwalker Strangler kept taking unsuspecting women to the hell that was his basement. And nothing police did slowed him down. Because his victims were all prostitutes strung out on crack, chances are they would have been forgotten if it hadn't been for St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter Bill Smith.
These were women who, for want of a better term, seemed to be throwaway people. They seemed to be, to me, maybe no more than just a stick of furniture that had been discarded.
did you think maybe the killer was banking on that these were, as you say, throwaway people and nobody would care?
I think that's exactly what the killer was thinking about.
Smith decided to try to make people care by telling the story of one victim. He chose Teresa Wilson, whose body was dumped along a highway, so decomposed police couldn't tell how she'd been killed. Smith spent 3 weeks walking Broadway. He learned Teresa Wilson lived her whole life in the neighborhood. She grew up in this house. At 17, she was a mother. She named her daughter Chastity.
She was extremely close to her daughter and very, very loving. Her daughter was the be-all and end-all in Teresa's life.
Until crack cocaine took over. Teresa started working the streets. Her home base, this bench and payphone, trading her body for money to buy more drugs.
Johns would pick her up and she would ask Chastity to stay and to wait for her.
But she'd be telling her little girl, wait here on Broadway while I go turn a trick.
She would do that, yeah.
Police believe it was here on Broadway where the killer picked up Teresa. She was 36 years old when they buried her, just a few feet from that street. 5 days after Bill Smith's story ran, he found this letter in his mailbox. It was written on a computer, printed in red ink, and if true, the message was terrifying.
Dear Bill, nice sob story about Teresa Wilson. I'll tell you where many others are to prove I'm real. Here's directions to number 17. Search in a 50-yard radius from the X.
Included with the letter was a small map. Smith called the police task force and gave them directions to that spot.
Our search team started in this direction right here, and as we worked our way into this area, right at this location right here, a human skull was discovered. It was bleached white. You could not miss it. Our search party.
Detective Jana Walters, a member of the police task force, had already discovered two of the killer's other victims nearby.
This is a dumping ground for trash, all kinds of debris.
I mean, in that sense, is it almost a form of disgust or contempt, or?
Yes, it's. I believe he's proven a point. This is trash. This is an area where trash is dumped. There's no regard for this person.
I remember just almost freezing and thinking, this has got to be the killer.
We knew then we had our biggest lead and break in this entire case.
The killer may have taken his taunting to a new level, but he still wouldn't make it easy to catch him. There were no fingerprints on the letter, and he didn't lick the stamp, so no DNA sample. And the killer had even clipped the edges off that computer map to make it harder to trace. But he hadn't planned for Sergeant Bob Muffler, a cyber investigator who tracks down criminals on the internet.
We started looking at different internet sites that had these map drawing programs to try to figure out which one was used to draw that particular map. There it is.
Sergeant Muffler went to one popular site called MapQuest. Watch as he zooms in on West Alton, Missouri, the area detailed on the killer's map.
This is the intersection of St. Charles Street and Highway 67, and right away you can pretty much tell it doesn't look like that map that was sent to the newspaper.
Take a look. Here on MapQuest, the roads have arrows, and the icon for Highway 67 is a different shape than on the killer's map. The cyber cops went to other sites. Here on Yahoo, again you see, the icon for Highway 67 looks different.
They didn't use Yahoo.
After 4 days of searching, investigators tried Expedia.com.
One thing right away I noticed is that the icon was extremely close to the intersection, and it looks like it's the same shape.
Close, but still not an exact match.
Now, it's not quite on the intersection there, is it?
That's right. When you go up to print the map, that's where it gets real close, real fast.
And now you got almost an identical replica of what the killer had sent to the newspaper.
That's correct.
So police believe the letter writer used Expedia. But now they had to check how many people clicked on that intersection during the 5 days from when the story ran to when the letter arrived. The answer? Just one.
And what was that person's name?
Maury Travis.
Maury Travis, a 35-year-old hotel waiter who had lived with his fiancée in this suburban home a few miles outside of St. Louis.
What kind of boyfriend was he?
A boyfriend that I grew to love and wanted to marry and have his children.
Felicia Ramey was a drug addict. Travis had spent time in prison for armed robbery, but she thought they were putting the bad times behind them. She says Travis, whom she called Toby, was determined to get her off drugs. He even enrolled her in nursing school.
He was a very beautiful person. He was supportive, and he helped me build my self-esteem back up.
People at work also liked him. Julie Kranig used to pick up her boyfriend, who worked with Travis as a hotel waiter.
I never felt uncomfortable around him. I mean, I was actually glad to see him because he would talk to me and keep me company.
But one thing stood out. Travis was fascinated by a series of mysterious murders. Julie was working that summer at a local TV station, and Travis wanted her to do a story.
He said that a lot of prostitutes had been found and that police linked it together and realized that there was a serial killer out there killing prostitutes.
Even before the killing spree started, Travis's girlfriend says she began to sense something troubling. When they fought about her drug problem, he could suddenly turn threatening.
He told me he would really hurt me. He knew, "You don't know me, girl."
When he said, "You don't know me," did you think maybe I don't know him?
I knew to get the hell out of there.
In March of 2001, Felicia moved out of the house. And that was the month bodies of dead women started showing up around St. Louis. Which brings us up to last June and the killer's bold letter and map, which led police not only to another body, but also to Maury Travis's front door. It was 7 a.m. on a quiet morning last June when authorities knocked on Maury Travis's door. They had linked him to the computer map, but they still needed evidence to prove he was the streetwalker strangler.
He answered the door very agitated. Wanted to know why the police were there. He was told, you know why we're here.
Captain Harry Heger, who ran the Joint Task Force, told his two men to take a low-key approach, hoping Travis would trip himself up. Sitting in his living room, the investigators asked about the missing women, but never accused Travis of killing them.
They had a casual conversation with him, sitting on the couch for 2 hours. It was kind of a cat and mouse type conversation.
Did he at any point admit anything?
No.
Did he at any point deny anything?
No, he never denied anything.
One thing Travis did seem curious about was what brought police to his home. They said it was the internet.
He cursed under his breath and made some reference to the computer.
So he knew he had tripped himself up.
He knew why we were there.
After 4 hours of jousting, they took him to police headquarters. Captain Hager went in to talk with Travis himself.
He made reference to my investigator that he wanted somebody else brought in because he found this man to be a bore and wanted somebody more challenging.
He's there in custody with all this evidence against him, and he's saying, bring on somebody tougher.
Yeah, it was a false face, all arrogance.
But sitting in the interrogation room, Travis must have realized his mind games were almost over. He knew what police would find at his house. In the basement, a secret torture chamber where medieval cruelty was dished out with modern efficiency.
I see a stun gun here.
Very effective, can disable people.
Wow. Do we have reason to believe that he used it on these women?
Some of the pictures of the victims, they had burn marks on the upper body.
Travis kept scrapbooks on torture and had collected every article about his terrible crimes. But the most horrifying discovery were these tapes. Maury Travis had recorded every step in how he ensnared his victims. First, in his bedroom, he gave them crack cocaine to smoke and had sex with them. Next, he would get them to engage in strange rituals. Travis would dress them in white and put sunglasses on them. Then, listen carefully. Police believe that is the sound of Travis dragging a woman down the steps to his basement. There, he shackled them and turned into a monster. His tapes reveal he had an obsession, haranguing the women over how they had abandoned their children for crack.
You want to say something to your kids?
Mama, sorry.
Who raising your kids?
Me and my mom and dad.
You ain't raising shit. You on here in your back smoking crack. You ain't going home tomorrow. I'm gonna keep you about a week.
Later, he would establish his total dominance.
Say it clear.
You want the master?
On one tape, Travis plays out his blood sport to the end. Police were horrified to watch Travis wrap a belt around the neck of this woman, then choke her to death on camera.
This is first kill, number 1. First kill was 19 years old. Name out.
Now, finally, it seemed Travis would face justice. He was locked up in a super maximum security jail cell and put on suicide watch. But the killer had one final surprise.
With Maury Travis standing here in the back corner of this cell, no one could see what he was about to do next. Travis took a thin braided strip of sheet and somehow was able to thread it through that vent, then used more of the sheet to create a noose. Then somehow this master of bondage was able to tie his hands behind his back. Standing on this toilet, Travis put his head in the noose and then stepped off. He was found dead a few minutes later. Why do you think Travis killed himself?
Maury was a confident, fairly bright person who was controlling the game, and it was probably humiliating, one, to catch yourself, and two, the game was over.
And he was no longer in control.
Control was obviously the most important thing with the women, with the media, and with the police.
Trying to maintain his control, even in death, Travis left a suicide note for his mother.
My death seems to be the best solution, because I won't spend the rest of my life locked up. Or worse, let them kill me with a needle.
Why did he commit these terrible crimes? This is all Travis had to say.
I've been sick for a long time. Sick in the head. Since I was about 14. I don't know why. I was just sick.
Everyone connected to the Maury Travis case takes something different from it. Reporter Bill Smith says it was Travis's lust for attention that finally brought him down.
Why do you think he wrote you that letter?
I think there was a moment probably in him that, or a piece of him that wanted people to know that he had this kind of power.
But for St. Louis Police Chief Joe Mokwa, it's all about the many questions. Travis left, still unanswered.
He claims he killed 17 women. We're missing 5 of them. Who are these other women and where are they? There's some families out here that have a lost loved one, and they'll always be uncertain of what happened to him.